In our topic today, key concepts in new religious movements. I want to say that the new religious movements can be novel in origin or part of a wider religion, in which case they are distinct from pre-existing denominations. In 1999, Erin Baker estimated that the new religious movements, of which some but not all have been labeled as cults, number in the tens of thousands worldwide, most of which originated in Asia or Africa, and that the great majority of which have only a few members. Some have thousands, and only very few have more than 1 million. In 2007, religious scholar by name Elijah Segra commented that although no NRM had become the dominant faith in any country, many of the concepts which they had first introduced have become part of worldwide mainstream culture. They are also called New Age religions or emerging religions. Even within Christianity, you hear of the emerging Christianities. Maybe it is a politer way of calling it emerging religions or New Age religions. Those emerging Christianity have unique characteristics that are evident or that are not necessarily common. They are not common, they are unique. Now, when we try to look at these concepts of new religious movements, we may want to specifically focus on 3 things: church, sect, and cult. I want to elaborate each of them and dwell more on cults because most of these NRMs are associated with cultism. So it is good, it's very important that we look at cultism or cult as a key concept in NRM debate. That doesn't mean all NRMs are cultic or sectarians. Some are even now conventional churches. Although they began as unique new religious movements, but some have graduated to conventional churches and influenced the happenings in the mainline religious movement. Let's take the case of 3. We are not saying only church has cult as NRMs. No, even Islam and other religions have NRMs. After all, NRMs are not Christian or Islam or one religion. It is quite a number. But Christianity provides more NRMs than any other religious groups known in the world today. So let me talk about the 3 concepts: church, sect, and cult. First, church. A church is a conventional religious organization, and we need to distinguish it by looking at the 4 marks of the church, also known as the attributes of the church, which is a term describing 4 distinctive adjectives, namely 1, 2, holy; 3, Catholic or universal; and 4th, apostolic. Those are also the marks of the church. The church is 1, the church is holy, the church is Catholic, and the church is apostolic. Apostolic means it follows within the apostolic succession. Catholic means it has the universal appeal. Holy means it's the godly thing. It will not do unholy things. 1 means it is united in Trinity and other things that makes it a church. So we can say the 4 adjectives are 1, holy, Catholic, and apostolic of traditional Christian ecclesiology. Now, the 3 distinguishing characteristics of a true church: the preaching of the word of God, the provision of the ordinances, that is baptism and Lord's Supper, and the practice of discipline. So a church, a conventional church, has to have the 3 things, the 3 characteristics: discipline, provision of ordinances, and preaching. These are the things you don't expect to miss in any church. In the book of Revelation, Jesus warned those churches were stubborn sinners and not disciplined, that he was going to do it himself. That is Revelation 2:16. The only people who should remain in the church are those who show genuine faith and obedience to the Lord Jesus Christ, the great head of the church. Now, this is seen when individuals are doing everything possible to free from sin and pursue a righteous life. This is also seen in their love for fellow believers and for the God whom Christians worship. Now, we have talked earlier about what we call the golden rule of all religions. And we said that all religions, all conventional religious groupings in the world have what we call the golden rule. And it says, do unto others what you would have them do unto you. So if a religious grouping doesn't have the golden rule, then it can as well be something else, not a church, or something else, not Islam. Even Islam subscribes to that. Hinduism subscribes to that. Do unto others what you would have them do unto you. The second concept is sect. A sect is a deviant religious organization with traditional beliefs and practices. Sects are often subsets of religions due to their perceived need for reform. As the sect grows, it becomes more established beyond a congregation and becomes more accepted into the mainstream. At that point, it becomes a denomination. There are also established sects such as Jehovah's Witnesses and Christadelphians, which remain within the general urban society and which nevertheless successfully maintain their opposition to it. Now, destructive cult, there is what you call destructive cult, generally refers to groups whose members have, through deliberate action, physically injured or killed other members of their own group or other people or even to the general public. Now, through the two main sects within Islam, that is Sunni and Shia, agree on most of the fundamental beliefs and practices of Islam. A bitter split between the two goes back some 14 centuries ago. The divide originated with a dispute over who should succeed the Prophet Muhammad as leader of the Islamic faith, which he introduced. Muslims adhere to different Islamic sects. That is something we need to know also. There is Sunni Muslims who include 84 to 90% of all Muslims. Number two, there is Shiite Muslims. They comprise between 10 to 16% of all Muslims. There are also Sufis who are Islamic mystics. They are Islamic mystics, that is the Sufis. There is also Baha'is and Ahmadiyas, who are 19th century offshoots of Shiite and Sunni Islam, respectively. Now, there is a question there. Discuss the nature, the origin, and characteristics of any religious movement outside the Christian religion. Now, we have cases we can give, but we shall move on and get more. The third concept is cult. The third concept major concept in new religious movement is cult. It will always be mentioned here and then, now and then, every now and then when we are studying NRMs. A cult is a deviant religious organization with novel beliefs and practices. Sociologist Max Weber found that cults based on charismatic leadership often follow the routinization of charisma. Sociologist Roy Wallis argued that a cult is characterized by epistemological individualism, meaning that the cult has no clear locus of the final authority beyond the individual member. So as a member, the individual, the leadership is cultic, is like a small god. So cults, according to Roy Wallace, a key scholar in this area, are generally described as oriented towards the problems of individuals, loosely structured, tolerant, and non-exclusive, making few demands on members without possessing a clear distinction between members and non-members, having a rapid turnover of membership, and as being transient collectives with vague boundaries and fluctuating belief systems. Wallace asserts that cults emerge from cultic milieu. Within the cult, as a concept, we may look at specific cults like racist cults, terrorist cults, polygamist cults, destructive cults, which I mentioned earlier, Doomsday Cult, political cults, and other things like case studies like now the Unification Church and Heaven's Gate, Jehovah's Witness, Scientology, Simon Kibangu's of Congo's church. We may look at all these now so that it can shed light on really what these are. But first, cults. Now, when we talk about racist cults, these are cults that are driven by racial hatred, xenophobic drives that we see in South Africa, for example, and such related concerns fit within this scheme. Of course, you may say South African xenophobia has nothing religion, but in Africa, where people are notoriously religious, you cannot rule out religion in many happenings. Whether you talk of politics, you talk of economics, all these mobilizations, even fights for independence, there is always a religious connotation somewhere. If you are talking about Africa, we know about. Now, racist cults can drive the racist cults, or their spirit can drive the racist cults to justify their hatred by appealing, for example, to scriptures. In such cases, religion is used as the engine that drives the racist agenda forward. Now, since the Ku Klux Klan, KKK in America, first formed in 1865, white supremacist groups in the United States have propagated racism. They have propagated hatred, violence, and so on. Individuals belonging to these racist cults have been charged with range of crimes, and this includes civil rights violations, racketeering, solicitation to commit crimes of violence, firearms and explosives violations, and witness tampering and all that. Nonetheless, white supremacist groups and their extremist ideologies persist in the United States today. That is 2021, they still persist. Sociologist and historian Orlando Patterson has described the Ku Klux Klan, KKK, which arose in the American South after the Civil War in 1860s, as a heretical Christian cult, and he has also described its persecution of African Americans and others as a form of human sacrifice. So during the 19th and early 20th centuries, the existence of secret Aryan cults in Germany and Austria strongly influenced the rise of Nazism, you remember, and of Hitler's Nazi Germany, which killed people. You remember the Holocaust, where 6 million Jews were reportedly killed. There was something religious connotation. There's something cultic in that. Even the adoration of Adolf Hitler. The Germans may not admit it, but there is something religio-cultism as far as I'm concerned. To drive such a deadly agenda, religion is always brought as a glue to patch it up and bring it together and help in driving that agenda as a godly agenda. Now, modern day white power skinned groups in the United States tend to use the same recruitment techniques as groups which are characterized as destructive cults. Apart from racist cults, which we have seen is many things in one, they are also religious cults, they are also destructive cults, they are cults, they are one in many, or many, 3 or 4 in one. So you can see racist cult may go beyond mere racist agenda and engage in destruction, killings, religious hatred, everything that is able to drive it. The agenda of racist cultism will be brought in to drive the agenda. The second type of cult is terrorist cult. In the book Jihad and Sacred Vengeance, Psychological Undercurrents of History, psychiatrist Peter Olson compared Osama bin Laden to certain cult leaders, including Jim Jones, David Koresh, Shoko Asahara, Macho Epoit, Luke Juliet, and Joseph Di Mebro. And he also says that each of these individuals fit at least 8 of the 9 criteria for people with narcissistic personality disorders. In the book Seeking the Compassionate Life, The Moral Crisis for Psychotherapy and Society, authors Goldberg and Crispo also refer to Osama bin Laden as a destructive cult leader. So you can see terrorist cults, how they employ religion to knit up their agenda. Now, at a 2002 meeting of the American Psychological Association, APA, anti-cultist Stephen Hassan said that Al-Qaeda fulfills the characteristics of a destructive cult, adding, in addition, we need to apply what we know about destructive mind control cults, and they should be a priority in the war on terrorism. We need to understand the psychological aspects of how people are recruited and indoctrinated so we can slow down recruitment. We need to help cancel former cult members and possibly use some of them in the war against terrorism. In an article on Al-Qaeda published in the Times, journalist Mary Ann Sigart wrote that Al-Qaeda resembles a classic cult. Al-Qaeda fits all the official definitions of a cult. It indoctrinates its members. It forms a closed totalitarian society. It has a self-appointed, messianic, and charismatic leader, and it believes that the ends justify the means. Similar to Al-Qaeda, the Islamic State of Iraq and the Levant adheres to an even more extremist and puritanical ideology in which the goal is to create a state governed by Sharia as interpreted by its religious leadership, who then brainwash and command their able-bodied male subjects to go on suicide missions with such devices as scam bombs against its enemies, including deliberately selected civilian targets such as churches and Shiite mosques, among others. Now, coming now to polygamist cults. Of course, Africa is full of polygamists, but we will not say that polygamists are necessarily cults. Now, but let's note that characteristically, polygamist cults are viewed negatively by both legal authorities and mainstream society, and this view sometimes includes negative perceptions of related mainstream denominations because of their perceived links to possible domestic violence and child abuse. Cults that teach and practice polygamy, marriage between more than two people, most often polygyny, one man having multiple wives, have long been noted, although they are a minority. It has been estimated that there are around 50,000 members of polygamist cults in North America. In Africa, there are pockets of Afro-Pentecostal churches that have no issues with polygamy, especially when addressing childless marriages. In North America, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, abbreviated LDS Church, practiced polygamy or plural marriage from the year 1830s. In 1890, the president of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, LDS Church, Wilford Woodruff, issued a public manifesto which announced that the LDS Church had ceased performing new plural marriages. Enforcement of the 1890 manifesto caused various printer groups to leave the LDS Church in order to continue the practice of plural marriage. Such groups are known as Mormon fundamentalists. For example, the Fundamentalist Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints is often described as a polygamist cult. In Africa, we need also to talk about some of the polygamist cultic religious institutions that they are also there. I remember interviewing somebody who is an archbishop of a Pentecostal church, Afro-Pentecostal, who is a polygamist, and he explains that other people are not around but him, who is a polygamist. And by the time I interviewed him, he had 3 wives. We have quite a number, even those Ruonomia churches. We have those Jehovah's Witness churches. We have quite a number in Kenya in particular. Now, another cult is what I mentioned earlier, the destructive cult. Some researchers have criticized the usage of the term destructive cult, writing that it is used to describe groups which are not necessarily harmful in nature to themselves or others. In his book, Understanding New Religious Movements, John Sariba writes that the term is overgeneralized. Sariba sees the People's Temple as the paradigm of a destructive cult, where those that use the term are implying that other groups will also commit mass suicide. In a nutshell, a destructive cult is a cult or other religious movement which has caused harm to its members or other people, or which will likely do so. There is a discussion of what harm really means in this context. For most researchers, it includes physical harm. So organizations which injure or kill their members qualify in this destructive cult. And I remember also giving an example of Uganda's Joseph Kibwatere, the man, a millennialist cult, which told people, its adherents, that on 1st of January 2000, Jesus Christ is coming to pick his church. And they were told, sell all your properties and come to the church compound. In the midnight of 31st December 1999, you hear Jesus coming, and you shall scream and await him and embrace him. And they sold everything. Now, once Christ did not come in that millennialist religious outfit, which is cultic, they then told the people, Joseph Kibwatere and his pastors told people, don't worry, he's coming, repent more, repent more. And they came with their children who are now getting hungry, awaiting Jesus. Now, on a dawn it reached, and you see they brought all the money. They had sold their properties and brought money to the pastors. And Joseph Kibwatere's church now had no choice. It reached March. Some were not dead, some had died, buried within the church compound. Others, they were told, take poison, you die quickly, you go to heaven only through death. Some took poison, they didn't die. And then they were crowbared with machetes, and Kibwatere and his team, they are seen to have left to the forest. No army was able to track them, of the Ugandan army or the police. They left. Now, these undestructive cults, they have very appetizing delivery of the message, and a lot of drama that is captivating and, attractive and moving and graphic. But there's a danger when they turn against the same sheep and consume the sheep in terms we may not describe. Even to describe once are not enough to describe what they can do. Another cult that I want to talk about is Doomsday Couch. Now, Doomsday Couch is an expression which is used to describe groups that believe in apocalypticism and millennialism. Millennialism is all about after 1,000 years, the millennium is over. Millennialists talk of 1,000 years. After 1,000 years, there will be rapture. The world will come to an end. Be prepared. Being godly. Very appealing message that people get prepared. And it can also be used to refer both to groups that predict disaster. That's why it's called Doomsday Cult. It is not just for apocalypticism and millennialism, but for any one group that keep predicting disaster, that there will be doom, and groups that attempt to bring it about, all those people who sell fear. If you don't do this, there's also doomsday political cults. If you don't vote me in, I'll destroy you, I'll finish you. Now, you see, or I'll go back to the forest and fight people. Now, these are very common in Africa, political cultism. Now, in the late 1980s, doomsday cults were a major topic of news reports, with some reporters and commentators considering them as a serious threat to society. Thus, doomsday cult is an expression used to describe cults that believe in apocalypticism and millennialism, and can refer both to groups that predict disaster and those that attempt to bring it about to destroy the entirety of the universe. Now, the expression was first used by sociologist John Rothbard in his 1966 study of a group of members of the Unification Church of the United States. So that is in Doomsday Cult, a study of conversion, proselytization, and maintenance of faith. Of course, proselytization means forced conversion. Real conversion is not proselytization. And evangelicals don't use the word proselytization or proselytizing. They talk of conversion, genuine one. Genuine, you convert people to the religion you want them to be, not forced conversion, which to me is nothing but proselytization. A classic study of a group with cataclysmic predictions had previously been performed by Leon Festinger and other researchers, and was published in his book When Prophecy Falls, a social and psychological study of modern group that predicted the destruction of the world. Now, in the book, The Copycat Effect, how the media and popular culture trigger the mayhem in tomorrow's headlines. The author here is Rorin Coleman, and he discusses the effect the media can have on the seemingly innocuous intentions of a French Doomsday Cult. And on September 5, 2002, Arnaud Musset told his followers based in Nantes, France, to look forward to voyages from Venus who would correct them before the end of the world on 24th October 2002. Though Musset denied any plans for a mass suicide, both police and the media drew parallels to the owner of the solar temple. Now, social scientists have found that while some group members will live after the date for a doomsday prediction by the leader has passed uneventfully, others actually feel their belief and commitment to the group strengthened. So social scientists have found that while some group members will live after the date for a doomsday prediction by the leader has passed uneventfully, there are always pockets or a very huge sheepish followers who feel their belief and commitment to the group is even strengthened by being told, do this by this day, and when the day comes that doesn't come to pass, you change the tune, you change the goalposts and tell them something different, and then keep them there, tie them like sheep, and they'll be there. Often, when a group's doomsday prophecies or predictions fail to come true, the group leader will simply set a new date for impending doom or predict a different type of catastrophe on a different date. These scholars need Hoover and Keener. They say this, that when you have gone far out on a limb, and so many people have followed you, and there is much sunk cost, as economists would say, it is difficult to admit you have been wrong. You see, it is very hard to admit when they have misled people. So these are doomsday people, and they keep people through these scaring revelations, as they call them. Now, the other cult we are looking at, for now looks like the last one before we get to the Unification Church, is the political cults. For now, there are many cults anyway, but we are only considering a few. A political cult is a cult with a primary interest in political action and ideology. Organizations like the Mexican far-right group El Yunque, which sponsored the Spanish far-right party Vox, the so-called the Canon conspiracy theory, the Raluch movement, and the growing neo-Pentecostal political influence in Latin America have been described as cults of new religious movements. Of course, this is debatable. Now, the Iron Guard movement of interwar Romania, which ruled the nation for a short time, has been referred to as a macabre political cult, a cargo cult, and a cult of martyrdom and violence. A cult of personality or cult of the leader arises when a country's regime uses the techniques of mass media propaganda, the big lie, the spectacle, the arts, patriotism, and government-organized demonstrations, and rallies to create an idealized and heroic image of a leader, often through unquestioning flattery and praise. That is the politics of cultism. In Kenya, we saw it during the earlier part, the middle part of Nyayo era, where there was a tendency to praise whatever the president did. There was no criticism. Critical voices were muzzled and people detained and jailed, others jailed through trumped up charges from being critical over the governance of the nation. One leader even called President Moi the Prince of Peace, an attribute only found in the Bible when Christ is described. There are those who called President Moi other names that made him a deity at one stage. That is a cult of personality, which is nothing but political cult. The phrase, even Jomo Kenyatta's time as the first president of Kenya, the political cultism was still there, but it peaked in the mid-1980s. That's when it peaked, after 1985, 84, thereabout, around 1990 or 92, when the multi-party came and neutralized that cultic political cultism. The phrase cult of personality came to prominence in 1956 in Nikita Khrushchev's secret speech on the cult of personality and its consequences, given on the final day of the 20th Congress of the Communist Party of the Soviet Union. In the speech, Khrushchev, who was the first secretary of the Communist Party in Russia, you call it Soviet Union then, in effect, the leader of the country, he was actually the leader of the country, being the first secretary of the Communist Party, he was the leader of the country. He criticized the lionization and idealization of Joseph Stalin, and by implication, his communist contemporary Mao Zedong, as being contrary to Marxist doctrine. The speech was later made public and was part of the de-Stalinization process in the Soviet Union. To remove Joseph Stalin leadership, that is de-Stalinization, he was the president of Russia. The speech by the first secretary of the Communist Party started that process that was working towards removing political cultism in a country. And you see the way they come, it comes like another religious force. Once it picks the momentum, it is nothing now but a political and religio-political agenda now, because people almost forget there is God and now focus on the leader himself. On the whole, a cult of personality and or political cult is similar to apotheosis, except that it is established by modern social engineering techniques, usually by the state or the party in one-party states and dominant party states. It is often seen in totalitarian or authoritarian countries. In turn, it is rooted from its Greek etymology, apotheosis, meaning to deify, make someone a deity or God. Now, from its Latin origin, deificatio, it is also called divinization, making one divine or God, and deification, or making one a deity, which makes making divine. It is the glorification of a subject to divine levels and commonly the treatment of human being, any other living thing, or an abstract idea in the likeness of a deity. The term has meanings in theology, where it refers to a belief, and in art, where it refers to a genre. Now, in theology, apotheosis refers to the idea that an individual has been raised to godlike status, In art, the term apotheosis refers to the treatment of any subject, a figure, group, locale, motive, convention, or melody in a particular grade or exalting, taking up. So that is how we can stop there on the key concepts in new religious movement. We have discussed the major concepts such as church, sect, cults, and we have given attention to cults because cultism is what appears in this debate. Maybe we can only ask one question before we close this lesson and before you make your comments. Distinguish between apotheosis and political cults. Where are the demarcating line? And demonstrate its relevance to your African context. If you are in Africa, demonstrate its relevance to you wherever you are. Thank you very much.